Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast with Ani and Brian. Join us as we explore the art and science of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools to strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional. Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you'll understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence. If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. This is episode 39. We're so excited that you're here. Ani, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Brian?
I am feeling really well regulated.
That must be why I'm feeling so good today.
Wait, I'm feeling really good.
That must be why I'm feeling really good.
Wait, is that why I'm feeling really good?
Maybe that's why you're feeling really good.
Maybe that's why we're both feeling really good.
Because we're co-regulating.
Oh, we are co-regulating. Yes, in today's episode, we are talking about how coaches can use co-regulation to get better client results.
Do you think husband and wife teams can use co-regulation to get? That's another episode.
Well, I tell a funny story about that a lot of times when I travel and teach that I don't think I've ever told you about before.
Oh, fantastic. I love it when I hear news stories.
So the thousands of people that I've taught when I've been on the road all by myself.
Great. Let's hear it, Brian.
Well, the joke I kind of tell is about how sometimes two people are vibrating at the same frequency, and other times they're just not. And if we dare to make a meaning about how we feel about things, we can come up with all kinds of crazy ideas when the plain fact is you're just not vibrating at the same frequency. And that feels really chaotic inside of your physiology.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've kind of just jumped all the way to the end of our episode today.
That's it, folks. Thanks for joining
for coming
us
today. Exactly.
I think that co-regulation, well, specifically today, we're talking about how coaches can use co-regulation to get better client results. I think that that's, I know that's something that more people are looking into nowadays as an actual thing, but there's also plenty of people who are listening today saying, back up this train. What the heck is co-regulation?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that, Brian.
So co-regulation from the research says that people have a vibrational effect on one another. And, maybe to even have this conversation, well, when I first started learning about things like co-regulation and vibrational frequencies and people's bodies, I had to back that train way up. So for me to bridge the gap between understanding things that I couldn't see, for me, I really just need to look at the science. So I spent a long time unpacking the vibrational science of being a human in a way where I could really understand it, and then of course share it and teach it to other people.
So what does that have to do with physiology at all? Like, we're talking about vibrational frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming I know that this has something to do with energy, but like, what does that have to do with physiology? Because we're all about helping people understand physiology and the nervous system and right, making things really practical.
Sure. Well, way back in 1978, there's a guy by the name of Barrett who discovered that our connective tissue or our fascial tissue in our body produces electricity. So what's connective tissue, first of all? So connective tissue is the most ubiquitous tissue in your body. You're more connective tissue than anything else. I like to think about it. There's two ways I like to think about it. One is kind of like paper mache. Paper mache there's newspaper there, but what holds it all together is water and flour. That's basically like the water and the flour is the connective tissue. It holds everything together. The way I like to think about it is a Jell-O mold. And so have you ever had a Jell-O mold before?
No, as a matter of fact, I haven't. I've been listening to you talk about the Jell-O molds for like 15 years now.
You've never had a Jell-O mold?
No.
Come on, really? Like a lime Jell-O mold or orange Jell-O mold? You've never had a Jell-O mold?
No, I've never had a Jello mold.
All the nursing homes that you've worked in, you've never, have you ever seen a Jello mold?
Well, I've seen pictures of it.
Oh my God. This is unheard of. You might be the only human on the planet that has never actually had okay, anyway. So
that was like a 70s thing, right?
For any people listening out there who are normal humans and and have actually had a Jello mold before, you've got this Jello mold, and inside of the Jello mold, you have little pieces of fruit in there, like grapes and mandarin oranges and pineapple or bananas or whatever it happens to be. And that's kind of like how our physiology is based on our framework or our structure. That the Jello is like our connective tissue, and then everything inside of the Jello, these little pieces of fruit, are like our nerves. By the way, nerves are wrapped in connective tissue. Or the pineapples are like our muscles. By the way, our muscles are wrapped in connective tissue. Or there are organs. By the way, our organs are wrapped in connective tissue. So we're really this Jello mold of connective tissue with a whole bunch of other things invested within the connective tissue. So we're mostly connective tissue. So what Barrett discovered is that when connective tissue is stretched or stressed in some way, like stretched, compressed, sheared, that kind of stuff, it produces electricity. Special kind of electricity called piezoelectricity. Piezo means pressure. So you get electrical conductivity through the connective tissue itself, not like down a nerve, but it goes all out in all directions. So like a nerve, the conduction goes in one direction, down the nerve pathway. But in connective tissue, when you shear or stretch or breathing, moving, anything at all, walking will change the shape of that connective tissue. You get this electrical impulses go throughout all directions in your body, 1,080 degrees in all directions through the whole, what we call net of connective tissue. So we're constantly producing electricity in our bodies just with moving and breathing and those sorts of things.
Yeah, it sounds like that's just happening all the time.
All the time.
So, I mean, some people will be like, I don't know about this energy stuff. Guess what? It's happening.
Guess what? So if electricity is a form of energy, then you're producing energy all the time. And especially, in all kinds of different forms, actually. But electricity is one of them. Piezoelectricity is one of them.
So this is a little off topic, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So is this one of the reasons why when people have really tight, like muscles and parts of their body are really tight, like they might have actually less energy, like they feel like they're less energized?
Sure.
Because things aren't traveling really well.
Sure. Things aren't traveling well. And the other thing that happens is when we have chronic muscle tension, like if a muscle is contracting chronically, like normally muscles have two phases of activity, contraction and relaxation. So a really super healthy person is one that never uses more energy with their muscles than they have to, like a cat. Like, look at our cat. Lucky never uses any more energy than he ever has to at any given time.
He doesn't, but when he needs it,
needs it, it's there. And then he goes back to completely being floppy and relaxed again. Whereas a lot of humans have all this chronic tension in our necks and in our backs because the muscles are chronically tight. So when muscles are chronically tight, they're using energy to not do anything. They're just being used to be tight, but they're still consuming energy.
Right.
So that contraction consumes energy, which drains down your energy and just kind of wasting it and holding something that is not really functional or helpful. But that's also compressing and twisting connective tissue, by the way, also. So you're not getting a lot of really good conductivity through the tissue either.
Yeah. And those tight muscles and connective tissues are actually also, we talk about with our students, holding in place things like our limiting beliefs and thoughts and emotions that are challenging for us to let go of, and conditioning that we're working on trying to condition, like our actual muscle tissues hold those things in place. So back to energy. Okay. So we have established that humans are energetic beings.
Well, we've established that they're at least energetic on an electrical level at this point.
Right. But there's also magnetic.
Yeah. So people are like, well, let's make that leap. Like, how does that work? Well, if you have ever heard of Faraday's law. So Faraday's law, which is a law of how the universe operates, is that electricity is always paired with magnetism. They can never be separate. If you have an electrical current at all, you will always have a magnetic field around it. Now, it could be a strong magnetic field, it could be a weak magnetic field, but that really depends on the amount of electricity that's going through the cable. So, like a little electrical cord that is between your computer and the wall, very, very tiny magnetic field around that. But like high tension wires, Big magnetic fields are produced with high tension wires, which have been associated, of course, with people's physiology can be broken down, can create disease and distress in physiology that's around non-coherent energy fields. But let's just back up again for a moment. So whenever you have electricity, you always have magnetism. So if we're walking around and always producing piezoelectric flow of information, we must also be always walking around and creating magnetic fields. And there's been a plethora of research on this. And one of my favorite researchers is Dr. John Zimmerman, who was in Colorado doing research in the early 2000s, late 1990s, that sort of stuff. And he created a special chamber called a squid chamber where he could measure subtle bioenergy fields. And he measured that the magnetic field frequency of the heart extends outside of the body at least 15 feet. That's how far they were able to measure it. Now, it could go farther than that, but the sensitivity of the equipment they had could only measure it up to 15 feet.
And that's bigger, they found, than the brain.
Yeah, so the magnetic field of the heart is 1,000 times greater than the magnetic field of the brain.
I mean, I think that's so cool on a lot of levels.
On a lot of levels.
And in the very intellectual, brain-based society that we live in, like, for example, whenever I see something out there around come learn neuroscience, it's got a big picture of the brains, like the physiology and neuroscience is so much, Anyway, yeah, the impact of the heart is profound.
Yeah, the heart is what we call the primary biooscillator. The brain takes its cue for coherent vibrational oscillation from the heart. If you think about it, the heart is beating all the time. So there's always that stress, and it's surrounded by connective tissue. The pericardium, which is the heart protector in Chinese medicine, is all connective tissue. So it's surrounding a heart that's beating constantly. So it's constantly creating a piezoelectric flow, which means it's constantly creating a magnetic field all of the time.
Right.
Now, the brain doesn't have that kind of connective tissue activity and stress on it,
Yeah.
right? Because some of the brain is myelinated and some is unmyelinated. Myelin is forms of connective tissues. They're wrapping the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a lot of that kind of activity going on in the brain, but you have a lot of that kind of activity going on in the heart and in distribution through the rest of the body.
Right. And there's more connections going from the heart to the brain than
the brain to the heart. Exactly.
Yeah. So what does resonance have to do with this whole thing about the heart?
Yes. Okay. So magnetic fields are measured in hertz and electricity is measured in volts. So they're always correlated with one another, but they are measured differently. So anything that is measured in hertz is vibrational. And so now we talk about vibrational, that's what we're talking about in terms of resonance. So the word resonance is specifically talking about vibrational field frequencies.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I think that's so fascinating. And I knew that, but you just helped me click in because so many people talk about what they are or not resonating with.
Mm-hmm.
I make this joke about how everybody, even McDonald's, is talking about authenticity nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with resonance. But I love that because people are actually talking about vibrational and like energy medicine when they're saying that. They just might not even know it.
Yeah. So yeah, we're always talking about that. And think about drums. So a drum is a cavity that's covered with, traditionally like an animal skin or something. And then when that's hit, depending on the size of the cavity of the drum, you get a different frequency of resonance.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah. So resonance is all about vibrational frequency. So we know in our bodies, certain vibrational frequencies actually will stimulate healing in tissues,
Mm-hmm.
and other vibrational frequencies will stimulate breakdown and disease in tissues. Disease being basically when it's out of the range of homeostasis. Homeostasis is when everything in the cell is operating the way it's supposed to be happening. Everything's in balance. Now that balance tends to be dynamic. Sometimes it's catabolic, sometimes it's anabolic, sometimes it's sympathetic, sometimes it's parasympathetic, but there's a relative balance there, where if you spend too much time out of that balance, that's when you create disease. So certain wavelength frequencies actually create disease in the body, like those high tension wires, and other frequencies create or stimulate healing in the body.
Right. So we're talking about coaches and coaching, and all of a sudden I'm like, he's talking about the H word. Like, hang on a second, because as soon as we start to talk about healing, some people are going to be like, change the channel. Like, hang on, they're not talking about coaching, because this conversation about coaching and therapy gets very well, it's talked about a lot in the coaching industry. And when you're not talking about humans as vibrational beings, which they are, then a piece, a big important piece is missing from that
Yeah.
conversation. But just to use the words that you're using, and use other words too, it's like the energy or the resonance can create destruction, or it
Yep.
can create creation.
Yeah, sure.
Like we
Yep.
can, right? We can use energy to destroy or to create, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And it's really, again, what is in harmonic resonance with the tissues or the body. I like to think about it like a symphony. If you were going to watch a famous symphony play, let's like the Boston Pops or something like that, and highly skilled musicians, they all know their roles, they play beautifully together. Now, if they don't tune their instruments before they play, it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long they've been playing or how well they know their stuff. If they don't tune,
Forget it.
sounds like a third grade band, right?
Yeah.
It's horrible. So the primary thing is first they've got to tune their instruments to the same frequency. So our bodies have, again, vibrational frequencies that are within normal and healthy ranges. And every tissue in the body actually heals at a different frequency. Like bones are stimulated to heal at 7 hertz. Nerves are stimulated to heal at 2 hertz. I mean, researchers know what every frequency in the body is stimulated to heal at. Bone stimulators are set at 7 hertz to stimulate bone healing. In physical therapy practice, we used to use infrared lasers, ultrasound, TENS machines, like all this equipment technology in order to try to stimulate healing in the body. And it turns out that since humans are vibrational beings, we can actually channel energy through our own body in order to stimulate our own healing and potentially stimulate healing in somebody else.
Isn't it funny though? We're way more comfortable talking about when technology is the thing that's going to stimulate that healing,
Yeah.
rather than us.
Yep.
So as we're talking about this co-regulation thing and how we can have an impact with other people, it's really reminding me of the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, which is just one organizing body around coaching, and how they talk about like the coach's state. And they don't necessarily use the word resonance. I'm not even sure that they know like the energetics behind it. I'm not sure, but they do know that they define coaching as like this partnership with another person. In order to be able to partner, we are talking about co-regulation, and they understand, and it's in their competencies about being present as a coach and mindful and doing your own work and clearing your own space and being ready for calls and stuff like that. And really the science and the physiology behind what they're talking about is what you're talking about here.
Sure. And when we come into highly coherent states, which means that my brain is resonant at the same frequency as my heart, is resonating at the same frequency as my spinal cord and nervous system, is resonating at the same frequency as my liver. So if I was a symphony within myself, I've got all my different parts that need to get tuned to itself.
Yeah.
So when I'm in that's what coherence means. Coherence means when all of my stuff is playing the same tune, is on the same frequency. And if it's on a healthy frequency, then my whole body will always be in a healthy relationship of cells dying and growing. Because cells die all the time, and we replace cells all the time. That's happening constantly. That's called cell apoptosis. I mean, it's just a normal thing that happens. Millions of cells, if not billions of cells every second die, and we grow new ones every second all the time. It's kind of fascinating. Just a little sidebar that every 7 years, you actually have a whole new body. Like every cell in your body has actually turned itself over every 7 years. You think about your skin, every 2 weeks, you get a new skin. Every 3 months, you get a new liver. I mean, so they're constantly turning over these new cells. Now, depending on your vibrational frequency, your level of coherence will determine what kind of new cells you grow. kind of what we're saying.
Mm.
So for each one of us to do our own work, to stay in our own sense of coherence is number one, the most important thing that we can do for ourselves. And then just by being human, we can't help but always interact and influence other people's vibrational fields, because vibrational fields are always, if the vibrational field of my heart goes 15 feet outside of my body and yours is 15 feet outside of your body, then right now our heart fields are commingling with each other in some way.
Mm-hmm. All the time,
right? All the time. And so this leads me to my little joke that I tell. It's that in physics, there's a principle called constructive interference. And that's the idea that if you've ever thrown a pebble into a pond and it creates a wave, if you throw another pebble in, if you get another wave and they match each other in phase, like two waves that meet in phase make a bigger wave.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that feels really good in your nervous system, because the way we process information, if you look at our physiology, it's first, we always process stuff first vibrationally, second emotionally, and third rationally, all the time. Right. That's how we process things in our physiology. And so so the little joke I tell is this, I say, remember the first time you fell in love? And you're like, you're just a wave, like you're minding your own business. I got this little wave thing I do with my hand here, right? And just living your own life, mind your own business, going along. And then suddenly you meet another wave and you're like, oh my God, that feels so good. And like I'm in love. We're so in love. Oh my God, we're going to get married and have babies and live together forever. All that kind of stuff. Right. And then you move into with each other, you get a pet. And you're like, wait, no, the dog's on the bed, no off the bed, no on the bed, no off the bed, right? And then you have kids, you're like, no public school, no private school, public school. And all of a sudden you're out of phase now. And then one day you're like, I swear to God, if one more pair of socks on the floor, we're getting a divorce. Because, right, now we're processing this, you're out of sync, what we call destructive interference. I'm vibrating at one frequency, you're vibrating at another frequency. And when you bring them together, it just feels chaotic in the body. And so we feel the vibrational frequency, and the emotions we give it are, I don't like that. And then we rationalize it as like you and your idiot, like kind of thing, right? But on the other hand, if you're in phase with somebody, it's crazy, right? If you're in phase with somebody, you're like, I love you so much. Right. Oh my God, you're so amazing. I don't care.
It's meant to be.
Well, but it's meant to be. But then you let the craziest things go by. It's like, I don't care that you disappeared for 3 days to Vegas with your buddies, never called me. That's okay, because I love you so much. You know what I mean? So it's like, if we're in that vibrational phase, we'll like rationalize away the most obvious cues that something is not like good. Yeah. But if we're a little out of phase, like we make the little tiny things the worst things in the world. But it all really comes back down to that vibrational frequency.
Just thinking, like, that's another reason why it's a really good idea to get in sync with your clients, so that when there's a little blips, like they forgive you.
That's totally right. So co-regulation, what co-regulation is, it's that we're using the principle of constructive interference in order to make the two waves in sync to create a bigger wave.
And this is how you get better testimonials and case studies.
Yeah, on an energetic level, that's how you do it.
Just in case you're wondering. That's really funny. And in all seriousness, from a client perspective, also, it feels so good to be co-creating that wave together. Yeah. And that really is one of the reasons I love coaching, partnering with your clients. And so we can partner from an energetic place. And I know we're going to wrap up here in a second, but just give us like, what's one great way for somebody to start to cultivate this stuff within themselves so that they can be that powerful co-regulator?
Right. So here's the thing. If we talk about tuning your body, all parts of your body like a symphony. Well, if we're magnetic fields, and it's really based on resonance and magnetic field frequencies, the most important thing we do is tune to the big magnet.
The big mama.
The big mama, which is the Earth. The Earth has a magnetic field frequency. It's called the Schumann resonance. And what research shows is that when living things are shielded from the Schumann resonance, they actually become very dysfunctional in their systems. Their cells start to break down. They start to become diseased. So all living things on the planet, including us as humans, it's very important that we have some level of resonant capacity with the vibrational frequency of the earth itself. So the best thing we can do a lot of times is get out in nature, get away from the artificially created vibrational fields that we have. Be around grass and trees especially are really great because they're so rooted and grounded. By the ocean is great, along the sand there's all kinds of great places where we can start to tap in. But even with that, it's really about becoming very present, practicing the core centering practices that we teach.
Yeah.
We don't talk about this a lot with core centering, and we do for a little bit. But one of the really magical things we're doing with the core centering practice is helping people to come into coherence and resonance with the Schumann resonance.
And when you practice core centering out in nature, especially, it's just so profound. It's one of my favorite things to do with groups and when we lead retreats, right? Is to go out in nature, and you can it's so much more fun and you can feel it.
Yeah. And when you feel it, people will say they feel more relaxed and they feel more present and they feel more centered and they feel more inspired and they feel more compassionate and forgiving. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the levels of consciousness in power versus force.
Yeah.
And those higher levels of consciousness always, 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 I'll say it one more time, always correspond to higher levels of coherence in our bodies. And as coaches, if we are practicing and living in those higher levels of coherence, that's another way we can actually support our clients in raising their own levels of consciousness. Right? So when someone's really stuck at that lower level, just showing up at a higher level of consciousness and invites their nervous system then to tune to your frequency.
And boy, that's just it's so much fun and it's so easy. It's one of the things I love when we watch our certification students really integrate the work and just become the person who can hold the coaching skills. And it's one of the reasons why, by the way, our certification programs are more robust than other programs. Some people are like, I want to do it in 6 weeks. And with our Somatic Coach Training Program, it takes a number of months to become a person who can hold, like you were saying with containers, like holding these frequencies. And then it's so much fun and so easy to be able to do that so effortlessly with your clients. And they'll say things like, you're the secret weapon and you're magical. And I don't even know why. And what we know is there's these really awesome energy principles behind it.
Yeah. And I'm surprised you haven't asked me the question yet that you always ask.
What?
Well, it's around the idea of if you have two people and they're resonating at different frequencies and they're in proximity to one another and it feels incoherent, at the same time, our nervous systems are always trying to find balance and coherence. So these nervous systems are influencing one another. So if you have a certain frequency and I have a certain frequency and our nervous systems are trying to influence one another, who wins? Who wins?
I do like to win.
Right? So
who wins? The person who is.
It's not the person with the highest frequency. Is the thing. Always people are always like, I'm just going to be high frequency and high vibe, and I'm just going to change everybody around me by being high vibe.
Right.
Now that's not true. But the thing is, the person who actually leads the vibrational frequency in the relationship is the person with the most persistent vibration.
I don't know that I've ever heard you say the word persistent. I usually say the word consistent. Yeah. The most persistent.
The most persistent vibration is the one that actually will end up being the big tuning fork in the relationship.
Right. Which is why this can be so frustrating for people when they're in groups, because they're like, so-and-so's dragging us down, but I'm the leader, or, the leader just can't seem to raise everybody up or whatever, but it's the person who has the most persistent, consistent energy
Yeah.
about them.
And so it's interesting because I think in relationships and family dynamics and employee leader relationships and team relationships, all those kinds of things, it's so easy for us to point the finger at the person that we feel like is dragging everybody down and say,
Yeah.
I wish they would change.
Yeah.
And not go like, wait, if I just became more persistent
Yeah.
in the vibrational frequency that I wanted to be in, it's really just a matter of me becoming more persistent for myself. It's not about me trying to force
Change
someone else to
you.
change.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something we can do with our clients and in our groups and our
Mhm.
teams all the time. And it reminds me of that. It's really from the Tao Te Ching. I was going to say like Chinese saying, but it's really from the Tao Te Ching about how water is the most powerful thing on earth.
The softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest
the
thing.
hardest thing. And if you think about how water just time after time after time, rub on the rocks until they're smooth. I mean, that's the power of a really resonant leader or coach or parent or teacher or something like that.
Yeah. There's another little saying I love from the Tao's coming to me too, is the thing with no substance enters where there is no space.
Oh, that's
Right.
good. Yeah.
And so I again, if
Yeah.
you think about you're in a relationship and someone's like
There's no space.
dense, right? They're so dense in their
Yeah.
vibrational frequency, the thing without substance enters where there is no space.
Yeah.
You actually can start to imagine how having the higher vibrational frequency starts to actually change and infuse itself.
I've
in other
definitely found
places.
that in there have been client scenarios where my rational mind's going, oh my God, there is like no space in how they're thinking or how they're feeling or their perspective, or we are rock and hard place, people.
Yeah.
The more that I can be in coherence, then I get in there and influence kind of naturally and invisibly. Yeah, so fascinating. We love talking about the energy medicine. And it's one of the things that, we get complimented on so often at the Academy. Brian, our students say all the time about how awesome you are at taking this science stuff, these energy medicine principles and the physiology, making it really practical and understandable, because most of our students love to learn about this stuff. They don't want to be science nerds, but they want to be science nerds. They want to hear about it. They want to understand it, but they really want to be able to utilize the principles. And you explain things so well to be able to let us go ahead and do that, even when there's Jello molds involved.
Even when there's Jello molds. Well, thank you so much, Ani. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm looking forward now to going and making a Jello mold and making you eat it.
Oh, no. I was really hoping you weren't going to say that. Now my frequency's all out of whack.
But Jello has its own frequency. You can jiggle it, right? And it'll make it better.
I'm going to have to go deal with myself. So we'll let you all go. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself. Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.